What to include in your sub binder. So what I wanted to share with you today is my sub binder. What do you include in your sub binder? How can you like prep some of this ahead of time so that way, you know, if you do wake up feeling sick or I don't know, you want to go to a friend's wedding. Something is happening in your life that's important to you or important to somebody around you and you want to be there to support them. Like you should be able to take those dates. So, first of all, what is a sub binder? For me, I just like, it's a folder or a binder full of resources, full of materials. So it's all organized in one space. So when you are going to have a sub, you can just yank it off your shelf or out of your drawer and say, here you go, sub. And now let's talk about the things that I think are important to put in it. And as you're watching, if you're like, oh, also you should add, chime in. Feel free to chime in, drop comments, and let me know like what else would you add to the sub binder, okay? Let's get started. So the first thing I do is I put like a general info note, and it's just like a one-page doc where I give them like the absolute no's and the absolute yeses in my classroom, how I manage like bathroom passes and, you know, stuff like that. Just like kind of little housekeeping sort of things. Next page, the sub binder, in case of emergency. Go to your secretary, go to your, you know, administrative assistant and say, okay, I need a copy of the emergency plans for every scenario. What happens if a tornado drill goes off? What happens if the fire drill goes off? Where does somebody go from my room for like the exit, blah, 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 blah. Those papers go in your sub binder. Then bell schedules, super important, and all variations of bell schedules. And usually like clearly mark, you know, this is when you eat. This is when you can go to the bathroom. Stuff like that. Make it as clear and obvious for your sub as possible. So include all the possible bell schedules and then make sure you mark, you know, this is when you're doing what and where. Rosters and seating charts. I feel like this is probably a duh, but make sure you include a list of the roster. Make sure it's up to date, right? So if you have a student drop your class or switch class periods or whatever, get them off the roster so that your sub isn't looking for a kid who's no longer on your list. And then make sure you have an updated seating chart. And I usually like to include both, just a list roster and the seating chart, because some people prefer to just look at the list and some people prefer to look at the seating chart. Offer them both. Another page that I add, and this is mostly actually a blank page. It's just kind of like a graphic organizer. I call it notes for the day. And each class period has like a chunk on the piece of paper, like a box or something, where they can say like, first period worked really well, so-and-so was missing, this person had to leave for an appointment. But I found that including that piece of paper in the sub binder means that I don't come back to like 16 sticky notes places. Especially if you are a traveler like I have been in the past, when you're moving between multiple class periods, sometimes the sub doesn't realize that like leaving a sticky note on this desk in this classroom does not mean that I will get it. So making sure that they have a place where they can leave all that information, it's a good thing to add to the sub binder. The last page that I include in my binder of like always ready to go things is an emergency sub plan, or like 3. So these emergency plans are not like if I know I'm going to a wedding or if I know I'm going to be gone at a conference, that's not the same thing that I'd use those emergency plans for. Those emergency plans are like, I woke up at 4 a.m. and I cannot stop puking. I just need to not be at school today. You know, emergency plans. These are plans that your students in any of the preps that you teach, any of the levels that you teach, any of the class periods that you teach, maybe you have a separate plan, right, if you have multiple levels, or maybe you just have one thing that you're like, every class period gets to do this today, here, you know, but have some of those things ready. Including emergency subplans is fantastic, so that way you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to be sending emails to your teammates or to your secretary or principal at whatever time in the morning saying, hey, I'm puking, would you please print these things for my students, thanks. You know, nobody wants to have to send those messages. Let's talk about just a few quick ideas for emergency subplans that you can use with, like, you know, anybody. So the last few lives that I've done have been, almost all of them actually have been reading activities. A ton of those are like my favorite emergency subplans. I have a packet of like a bunch of different reading activities. So they like read and do true and false questions, read and draw, read and tweak the story, that are like basically reading activities that you can do with any reading. So big packet of those. And I have different colors of stories that I've just printed off from the internet that would fit, any of my levels. So like the green papers are all for level 1, the red papers were all for level 2, whatever. I have a whole blog post on, I think it's called 5 ways to find free materials for FER. That's where I find my readings that I use for emergency subplans. Also, having a packet of you can do this with any reading and a bunch of different readings. That's my favorite go-to emergency subplan because it's very simple. It doesn't require any technology at all. And because it's individual. So all of those things are kind of reducing stressors for the sub, right? They don't have to manage technology. They don't have to manage small groups or partners or anything like that. Very low stress, very easy. And you know that the students are getting some sort of valuable input and valuable practice. So this whole thing, I've been talking about what to include in your emergency sub binder. And a few of those things were things that I described a graphic organizer and this and this and this. This, I have that whole binder for you as a free download on senoritaspanish.com. Yay! Right? So if you're okay, trying to get ready for back to school and there's all these things going on and now you're telling me I need to get a sub binder. No, I'm telling you I have a sub binder for you. All right, that is pretty much everything that I had for you all. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm here to help you out.